From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in North Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning, too. It is another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 5th, and we are going to be heading into a period where we're going to be milder than average, and this is what's expected, and it's going to go to about the 20th or thereabout of the month. I expect a transition period between the 21st and 25th, and that might not happen to the 23rd, somewhere in between there, but it's going to happen. I do think, I'm very confident that we have a shift in the pattern toward the end of the month, and once we get into the very last end of the month of January into February, we will see more reasonably cold temperatures, meaning reasonably as in terms of what we would expect during the month of January. And we're going to get back into that pattern. So the pattern is going to be delayed by about a month, basically. Now, what I try to do in these Weather Weeklies videos, I put on a long-range forecast every Friday, and I do my best to defend it. And not defend it against people necessarily, but when you're making an argument, whether you're going for a PhD in this field or any field, you have to make some kind of argument to support your case. Okay. Now this is not a dissertation necessarily, but you get the idea. I want to defend the reasons why. I always explain why, and if you read the pattern discussions and precipitation discussions that we have in the long range outlook on Friday, I will do that. Okay. I don't just try to sling BS at people. We're not in the business to do that. There's no gain for me by slinging BS like some do that. I know some do that. Okay. And you may be used to that, but that's not what we do here. I will defend. And so what I'm going to do in this outlook is defend the reasons why I think that we do see that change at the end of the month going into February. But we are going to be above average for a while. And it goes through about the 20th. Again, I think this transition period is going to be somewhere here between the 21st and 25th. That could be the 23rd, 24th, 25th, but somewhere in that period, okay? And then we transition to slightly below average very end of the month going into February. And I can actually extend this beyond the second, but I limit the long-range outlooks to a 1-month lead on purpose so we can adjust as needed and you're not getting crazy. But the longer-range projections into February look like they're going to be pretty cold, too. And as a matter of fact, we have the month of February as a whole listed on the long-range chart for the first time this week. And you can see we're going with slightly below average temperatures, -1 to -3 below average for the month. And slightly above average precipitation continuing, so it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. It is yielding above average snowfall. This month, however, below average south, slightly below average north. I don't expect a lot of snow chances. As a matter of fact, you have a very fine chance here in the next 3 days or so between now and Tuesday, okay? Between now and Tuesday night, I should say. And then not again until maybe the end of the month. And there's not a certainty at the end of the month. I have no long-range storm signals in here for the end of the month just yet. But we are going to get turned slightly below average here in this end-of-month period, I think. So you at least have an opportunity if the storm presents itself in this time frame, okay? It might wait to February. So because of that, we're going to go with the idea that the snowfall for this month is going to be below average south, slightly below average north, because I do think you get some chances in there to get something over the next 72 hours or thereabout. Okay, so that's our long-range table. Here are the snow showers that are expected to come in overnight across the northern areas. This is just coating to 1 inch stuff for most. Further south, probably coating to a 1/2 inch. Okay, and this loop here is going to start mid-evening here, but for most of you further east, this is a midnight to like 4 or 5 a.m. deal. Okay, very quick in and out. A couple snow showers could coat the ground, so you could wake up even as far south as the Lehigh Valley here. You could be looking at some coatings here in the morning. Your cars, trees, that kind of thing. Grass, mainly non-paved surfaces. Further north, you could get up, coating to 1 inch. So we have sent alerts to those areas, and we're going to extend those further south this morning. After I do this video, I'll send those out for those areas. So this is just a quick clipper system to the north, bringing a few snow showers overnight. Not a huge deal. The bigger potential comes on Tuesday evening. Okay, there's still some moving around. This is the 6Z run. I did see the 12Z run of the NAM, and it is further southeast. I don't agree with that idea, with being that far southeast. Could it be right? Yes. We're not at a point where we're going to be putting a map out for this yet, and this is another quick mover, just Tuesday evening, it looks like. So this starts late afternoon and goes all the way up to about midnight here, and it's quick in and out. All right, but this could drop a quick 1-2 inches of snow, maybe even 3 in some spots, if this were correct. If it's further south and east, like the NAM has this morning, which again I don't really agree with, but it could be possible that these accumulations would not be in the interior. They would be further south and east, around I-95 and point south and east. But then you have a marginal temperatures issue. So I don't think it's necessarily correct. And if you look at the European ensembles from this morning, excuse me, this morning's run, I'm sorry, I'm still getting over a cold. This morning's run here, this is the probability of 24-hour snowfall equal to or greater than 1 inch. And you see the greatest probability is going to be right in here in the middle areas. Okay, so this is telling me that further southeast is probably not correct, either because of marginal temperatures or because of the shift being too far southeast. So, this is probably a better area right across the heartland, I guess, of our coverage area. So, it's I know it's only an inch, it's inch or two maybe out of this, and it's not a very high probability. So this is just a quick moving system that could give you a very thread the needle type of snow, but very minor. Okay, not a huge deal. Could affect overnight travel or evening travel on Tuesday into the overnight, maybe even some delays in a few spots if this materializes for a few school delays for some areas on Wednesday morning. Okay, if they get out and treat it fast enough, then maybe not. And maybe it doesn't accumulate in the roads too. We'll examine that as we get a little bit closer. Any maps from us will not come until Monday for this. Okay, there's still some bouncing around here with what the projections are going to be of snow and where that falls. All right, so we're still waiting on some things before we commit to any kind of snow map. Here's the average snowfall in December and January. These are the actual numbers that fell at each location in December. In red, and in one area they here in Scranton Wilkes-Barre that actually was technically slightly above average, and that was because of the stuff that happened generally in the first half of the month. Okay, this is the average snowfall for January. We expect below average snowfall for most of these locations here during this month. I will have a new graphic that's going to update next week that's going to include February too, because we are going above average in February. These snowfall amounts for each location in February are higher than January, and we're expecting it to be higher than that. So we'll have that included in the next week's graphic. I didn't have time to put that together this morning, but this is January, and you can see what averages are at each corresponding location, and we're expecting to be below average this particular month. With a quick shot here in the next 72 hours, and probably not again until the end of the month. It is a time period where I can't see that far yet to see if there's any signals in there. Could be, let's get the cold air in here first, okay? This is what a normal ENSO-neutral winter pattern produces across our region. You have cold across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Northeast, okay, and then warm further south. This has not been the pattern. Matter of fact, it's been, the pattern is going to be colder out here in the western U.S. In the upcoming week while we are going to be baking, okay? Blowtorch. You've heard that term thrown out there. We're going to have that in the 10th to 20th period. This is not something that is unforeseen. And we're not arguing against that. We don't think that's going to be, we have actually had that for a while now. When we flipped that long-range outlook last week, and everybody's like, oh no, here goes January, winter cancel. Well, it's not winter cancel. It's just going to be most of January's cancel, I guess, because you're going to take this sabbatical from the colder temperatures you normally expect in the month of January. And here's the main culprit, the unusually strong polar vortex. I say unusually not because it's unprecedented by any means, but because in this type of winter pattern with all the autumn precursors that we had, and I'm not going to go through all those again this week, but we had a lot of autumn precursors that would suggest that the polar vortex would not be strong this winter, and it would be easily displaced or split and rendered a lot weaker. Well, that has not been the case. This is current, okay? And you see a very strong polar vortex over the polar regions. This is not what you want to see if you want to have cold air bleed down further south in the mid-latitudes. When I say mid-latitudes, that's basically here where we live. All the cold air is bottled up here in the Arctic Circle basin. Okay, so that includes Alaska, northern Canada, northern Europe, and going all the way across northern Russia. So this is all the areas of the Arctic basin that it's going to be locked up at. Okay, so taking a look at longer-term PV changes here, I'm going to start this off here on the 14th. Look what happens here. You get ridging building in here and displacing and elongating this polar vortex as we head toward the 20th of January. This goes from the 15th to the 20th. Okay, and you can see the some warming here that's forcing against it, that's making it elongate and displace away from that polar region and gets down here more closer to Baffin Bay. All right, if that's the case, then we will finally see some kind of disruption of this polar vortex, which can change things a little bit. So that's one thing we're looking at. These are not guaranteed. These stratospheric forecasts are not guaranteed. So this is not good enough of an argument for me to make, saying, oh, well, we're going to change late month because of this. This is not an if A, then B situation. Okay, there are several factors I'm looking at here. Okay, the reason it's doing that is because you have the Scandinavian Ridge building in here, very strong Scandinavian Ridge that will help, if nothing else, and this is Scandinavia up here, okay, and you're looking at Europe broadly, but this, if nothing else, will help to block up the North Atlantic a little bit. So we don't have this fast progressive pattern anymore, and we get to block things up a little bit, and this can also play a role, not definitely, but can play a role in disrupting the polar vortex a little bit. And that's what the GFS ensembles are trying to suggest, and even the European ensembles to some extent, going out into the longer range. So this is something that we're watching here, and this is universally modeled to occur. So again, at the very least, you're at least blocking up the Northern Atlantic to slow down the pattern a little bit and get some blocking in the Atlantic. Okay, so examining the temperature periods. This is our cool shot here that we're going to have in the very short transient period of time between the 7th and 9th, basically. Okay, so we're going to have, this is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We have colder temperatures that are going to be closer to average, nothing extreme, but because we don't have we have no snow cover here, so you're not going to have extreme temperatures without the snow cover on the ground. Okay, so we get a cool shot here, but this is the pattern and the week ahead between the 10th and 20th, largely above average for that entire period. And you can see out west, they are colder. So west of the Mississippi, cold. East of the Mississippi, we get the warmer temperatures and a strong southeastern ridge. This is expected for that period. 10th to 20th at a minimum. Might go to the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, but somewhere in that week between the 21st and 25th, I think we transition. That's our transition period. Doesn't mean we go cold yet, but we're going to be transitioning from the above average to at least near average, and then we're going to work our way down to slightly below average by the end of the month. Madden-Zoe oscillation looks ugly. Okay, it's in the circle of death currently. It's going to reemerge somewhere around phase 4, loop through phase 5 and 6, before eventually collapsing back into the circle of death again. Well, these are look at these phases here. These are all warm phases. Here's 4, here's 5, here's 6. So it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. We're going to be warm. That supports the warm look over the next couple of weeks. After that point is what we're worried about, or what we're following. Where does it go after that? Does it go into the circle of death? Probably. Okay. Now, the circle of death is not a scary thing. Everybody thinks, I know it sounds like it is, but we've had some of our biggest snowfalls when the MJO was in the circle of death. Okay. Most recently, that big 30-plus inch snowstorm that we had between the lower Susquehanna Valley, Lehigh Valley, and the parts of northern New Jersey, and that was in 2016, 30-plus inches of snow. That happened when the MJO was in the circle of death. So this is not a death sentence for snow. Okay, it just means the best force. There's no clear signal on the best forcing and where that occurs across the equatorial regions where that convection lies. And if you look back to our number one analog, 2014, a lot of time was spent in the circle of death in both January and February. January here is in and the warmer phases too. And January is in red. February here is in the greens, and then eventually started working in the more favorable phases as we head into the month of March. But these still produced, even in February when it was in the circle of death. So it's not a death sentence in terms of snow when you have this kind of look. Okay, and here's how January 2014 looked at Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport. This is the centermost point of our coverage area. That's why I use this particular location. But I used this last week too. But there were some warm periods, very warm periods, noted here in the first half of the month, and we flip occurred somewhere around the 17th of the month. I'm saying we're going to do that this year, probably a week later than that. Okay, so we're a week behind 2014 in terms of that flip point. Okay, now here's a very good thing. Little find I have here. This is one of my bookmarks that I keep. This is from Dr. Paul Roundy at the University of Albany, and this is an experimental model he does. He's an MJO expert, basically, that came up with his own statistical model here with the regression map of the MJO. So what this is basically showing me is where the best forcing, and this is 14th of January, best forcing here, best tropical convection is going to be the maritime continent. That is expected, okay? So we are left with milder than average temperatures in the U.S., in the eastern part of the U.S., colder in the west. Well, we knew that, right? Well, as we go forward here to the next slide here, this is looking at late month when I expect this flip to occur. Well, now these areas are not showing the best convection. That's actually moved to the western Pacific. And look what's happening here. Eastern U.S. is getting colder. Western U.S. is getting warmer. Okay, and this is a result of the 200 millibar level driving the pattern. This is the jet stream level. Okay, and then once you get to February, this continues and it gets stronger. Oh, and it's like a northwest U.S. is warmer, southeastern U.S. and it's like the opposite of what it is now. Okay, so it looks like the cold is going to come in here according to his statistical projections and this model he uses, which is a very good analysis tool looking at projections. Because you look at the MJO, if I go back to that image, if I can, let's see if I can go back here. Going back to the MJO image here that I showed, this only goes through the 18th of January when it collapses in the circle of death. It doesn't go beyond that. These projections are not longer term. His statistical model does take it a little bit further here and goes into longer term then. Here's the 14th of January, just as expected and as modeled currently. But then you see this transition late month, 20th of January. Here's February 9th. And I can actually continue this beyond this into late February even, and it's still looking like this. So it looks like February as a whole is going to be colder and the opportunities for more snow. Here's the longer term CFSV2. This supports my idea between the 20th and 25th of January, actually showing that transition. It was warm here prior, and we knew that. But it's transitioning here to kind of near average during this time frame. And then after that, once we get into that final week of January through early February, we get the colder averages, the colder anomalies up here showing up across the northern U.S., and the southeast ridge kind of disappears. Okay, so you're seeing the CFS kind of fall into what my ideas were. I don't use these necessarily to make an argument of a forecast because they're models, they change. I'm trying to use global observations here. And the Euro Weeklies are also supporting that idea as well. Okay, so there are some things that I'm looking at here, global observation-wise, that are pointing to the fact that we are going to have some colder temperatures come in here at the end of the month, and then it's going to last into February. Is that a guaranteed slam dunk thing? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. As a scientist, product scientist, I should say, there is an acknowledgement on my part that there has to be some acknowledgement, at least, that this will not pan out exactly the way I think it will. Okay, but everything in my opinion is pointing in this direction. So I'm not trying to give anybody false hope. I'm trying to give you some tools here so you can see visually that these are observations. These aren't modeled. I mean, the models are agreeing. That's great. But observational things that we're looking at that will change the pattern downstream. Okay? Not a guarantee it's going to happen, but I feel pretty strongly that it will. Okay? This strong polar vortex breaking down, the MJO progression or regression, I should say, the Scandinavian ridge, the models that are supporting the whole idea. Let's just see what happens, but I'm very confident that this is going to at least trend in this direction here down the road. It's just going to take some time. In the meantime, we're going to have some very mild temperatures at least through the 20th, maybe 21st, 22nd, 23rd, before we start to transition toward the end of the month going into February. And I do think we make up for it here in the month of February with snow and cold. So overall, milder than average January, with the exception of a cool shot January 7th and 9th. Okay, this is going to might have a little snow here on the 7th in the evening of which will be Tuesday evening, and it stays cold on Wednesday and Thursday, and then again at the end of the month. I think we get that shot at the end of the month, but in between, it's going to be milder than average. All right, the polar vortex will break down the second half of January, building confidence in this feature happening. Okay, but the vortex breaking down is not a slam dunk thing either, and that's still a modeled thing. All right, so we're still waiting to see if this comes to fruition, but if the polar vortex does not break down, you still have other opportunities to get it cold into our region and snow in other ways. MJO will help with that. The one thing I didn't talk about, the atmospheric angular momentum is now positive. All right, so you get some poleward latent heat release there going on. All right, so there's a lot of things that are going into this that I did talk about in this video. Some things I did not talk about that's a little more esoteric, so I don't want to get into it. But the AAM being one of them, because a lot of people understand that thing. But there's some things I'm looking at that are making a case for that to change to occur. Okay, winter will likely end up being delayed about a month. Of course, calendar month started. I don't go by meteorological winter. Okay, so in this part of the world, I really don't think that really makes much sense, because winter doesn't start around here December 1st very much, at least not anymore. Okay, it seems like the last couple seasons it's been a delayed winter. Everything's been more like mid-January through the end of March, and it looks like that's where we're headed again this year. So winter will likely end up delayed about a month from calendar winter, which starts on December 21st and goes through March 21st. So we have that period where we're having winter, so that is delayed about a month until that last week of January, it looks like. So went a long time here again. I didn't want to go over 20 minutes. I'm just hitting the 20-minute mark, so I will let it there, but this is something we're going to continue to follow over the next couple of weeks and see where we're at. Adjust if we need to. Again, this is not a slam dunk, but I'm confident that at the end of the month, into February, we likely see some change. That's this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 5th. Hope you join us again next week. We'll have an update on this situation and see if we're still on target with our target dates. In the meantime, Seattle, Philadelphia today. I will say go Birds, but I'm talking about the Birds in green. Hopefully we get a win, and we'll be playing again next week. I'll see you guys again next week. Take care.